All right, great. So it says we're going to build a simple interface for school. You're going to use a menu. And it says that we have, if we look inside, we have two Python files and then a data container. We haven't done anything with the data container before, hence the post-lunch lecture. So we've got a runner file in here, which will basically just be used to run the user interface. Clear this. So you're going to develop a UI for this assignment, and you have a school class, which is blank. So the thing that you need to know about is we also have some data files, which we're going to need to pull from. So the gist of the prompt is that you're going to be creating a database for a school. A school has, a school class. You're going to have a student class, and you're going to have a staff class. So let's just go ahead and make um, some new Python files for these. So each file is going to contain a Python class. So we'll do a class student pass and then a class staff pass. Is everyone following along so far? For those following along? All right, I'm going to take the silence as a yes. If anyone has questions, interrupt. Okay, so the main thing to know for the student, well, let's go through the README actually, so that way I'm not just yapping away, but we actually have a thing to do. All right, so as it says here, the runner file, which is runner.py, this is just used to run the school interface. So the assignment's called school interface one. We're developing an interface. So another thing to note is, as it says here, the runner.py file imports the school class from school.py. So this is useful for kind of breaking things down. Like, for example, in the problem that you guys worked on this morning for homework, you guys put all of the classes in one file, right? I know I saw a couple folks whose files became like 80 or 90 lines long. That can get a little bit messy. So sometimes it's easier to create a separate file for each class, and then you'll just import the class from that file. Hence, in the runner file, we're saying from school.py, we're going to import the school class. All right. So moving on from there, so we're just going to go through the release and we're just going to copy paste this stuff. So we're going to just create a nice simple school class. So copy paste that in here. And we see now that the school is just initialized with having a name. It's got a list of staff, which is blank, and a list of students, which is also blank. Nice and simple. Again, these are just, making three different instance attributes. One of them is a user input. The other two, we're just initializing them as blank. That's kind of like what we did earlier with false, right? And with the blank list. So if we run our runner file, we now see that we're defining and initializing the school. The school's name is going to be Ridgemont High. And if we print the school's name, that should probably print the school's name. So if we run it, we do see that Ridgemont High gets printed. So our school has been created successfully. All right. So we now also need to create some student and staff classes. So before I show you guys the code that we're going to use for that, this is where the database part comes in, and which is relevant for your assessment. Ordinarily, right, if we're going to design a student class for homework, I would ask you guys, what types of things do you think a student would need? Would they need a name, an ID, an email address, a list of classes they're taking, etc.? Sometimes that list of characteristics is not defined by you or by the instructor, but it's defined by the data that is prepared for you, which is where the CSV files come in handy. So for those who haven't seen a CSV file before, it's basically an Excel sheet. That's all it is. Um, and we can actually pop this. Let me see if I can pop this open in Excel if my computer will not be a bit of a pain and not start breathing. Here we go. All right. And we'll just, we won't do that. So this is the student.csv file that is included in the assignment. And you've got a series of 5 different columns and 7 rows, including a header here. And each of these is just a row in your Excel file. That's all a CSV is. So if you think about it, each of these rows is technically one student, right? So imagine if we could convert a row in an Excel sheet into a student object that we could use in Python code. Just like we would use, like an ice cream cup or a cone in the last assignment. So we need to figure out how to get the data from this students.csv file into Python. So that's really the main challenge that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. But the first thing we need to do is we need to create a student class that is set up with the same structure as the CSV file. Does that make sense so far? Are there any questions? So we're basically just creating a student class that at its core is built to take in data from the CSV. Yeah, there's a super easy way for us to do that at the most basic level. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attributes right here. All of these are instance attributes, right? And they're all probably going to be things that we declare when we create a student. So there is absolutely nothing stopping you from taking this, going here, doing a definite, and then after self, we'll just copy all of that in. And then now we just need to do a bunch of self.name equals name, self.age is age, self.role is role, self.school ID is school ID, and self.password is password. So this way, we're effectively converting the headers of the CSV file, or the columns of it, if you will, into class objects. So that way, we can take Lisa, take all our data from one row, put it into a class, and create a student object for Lisa. We can do the same thing for Jesse and Slater and Kim, and so on and so forth. So this is just, again, we're just creating a class whose init structure matches the structure of the data in the CSV. That's the first step. And if we scroll down a little bit here, we see that's exactly what the assignment tells us to do. And we're going to do the exact same thing for staff. So staff has another CSV file. If we open it, we see that staff's is a little bit different because while student has a student ID, staff has a employee ID, but overall, same principle. So if we look at the code for the staff class, which is it's all in the README, we see it's basically the exact same thing. Okay, great. So that's step one, is we need to define our student and staff classes. So we're gonna skip the refactoring part because that's not too relevant for us right now. There is one important thing to keep in mind. Have you guys talked about args and quargs before?
Nope.
It was like the wild card where you can just take in any parameter and just add it to. It was like
Yes,
I think it was like star star arg, and then it should be able to pull in whatever the user puts in there. It'll just add it to, I think, or something.
perfect. Yes, Jose, that's exactly correct. Yep, so keyword arguments, as Josh mentioned. So ordinarily, and we'll just summarize this a little bit. Um, if we look at the student class, if I'm defining a new student, I need to put in the arguments in this exact order every time, right? Name goes first, then age, then role, then school ID, then password. Now, what if by accident I swap age and name, or I swap school ID and role when I'm typing it in? That's going to cause a huge problem for the Python code. This is where args and quarks come in handy. Specifically, and I'm going to go back to the README for this. If I have a dictionary, and I know how much you guys all love dictionaries because this morning, half of the suggestions I got for doing things with classes were all dictionaries. If I have a dictionary like this, I'm going to copy this into student. Why is this dictionary special? Well, it's got name, it's got a password, it's got a school ID, it's got age, and it's got role. So all of the keys inside this student info dictionary match up with my init method, right? So let's just write that down. So all of the keys in this dictionary map to a class or an instance argument or instantiation. So normally what I'd have to do to make a student, right, is I would say something like student, and then I'd say like Diana, comma 17, comma student. Like you guys get the picture, typing it in manually every time. Or saying something instead like student info name, and then student info, oopsies, age, and that becomes a pain. The easy alternative is where we can use quarks. So if we have a dictionary where all of the keys map over to the init function, like perfectly, what I can then say is I can say Diana, or like whatever variable name I want, equals student, and then two asterisks, and then the dictionary of stuff for them. So this is going to be helpful in about 5 minutes when we start doing the real task of today. So just to summarize, I'm just going to make a to-do list.txt. So what's the thing that we want to do for right now? The main thing so the overall goal is going to be to take our CSVs and convert them into Python objects. So the way we have to do that is first we need to define student and staff classes, which we have now done. Then we need to take student staff CSVs and turn them into lists of student slash staff objects in Python, which we have not done yet. And then we need to do whatever else the README says to do. So we've done the first part, right? We defined our student class real nicely here. We've defined our staff class here as well. Now comes the part where we need to actually go from the CSV file to Python. And that's going to be a little bit challenging. So does everyone feel comfortable with the point that we're at so far? Does anyone have any questions?
I do have one question. Where's the dictionary student info coming from? Did you create that or it
Yes.
was something
So
you did?
for
Okay.
now, we just created this. But you do raise a really good point. And that's I forgot to write that in here. But what we need to do is we need to convert the CSVs to lists of dictionaries. Then we need to be able to convert each dictionary to a student or staff instance, which is what we just did. So for right now, this dictionary is just something that I typed up. What we want to be able to do is to convert Lisa into a dictionary corresponding to like name Lisa, age 25, role, student, etc. If we can do that, if I can convert this into a dictionary, then I'm good. I'm all set because I know how to convert a dictionary into a Python class instance. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yep.
All
Could
right,
you
any
pull up
other
that
questions?
to-do list for like just a second?
Yeah, here, let me paste this into the chat, actually, so that way everyone has it. All right, any other questions? And I'm trying to pause a little bit more than usual because this stuff is pretty critical, but it is also does get confusing.
Uh, when you do the when you do quarks, you don't have to name it quarks. You can just
Yes.
do a double asterisk.
Oh, so you do need to name it quargs if you're doing it in the function. So there's two ways to use quargs, right? So one of them is like if I'm defining some function here, and then we're gonna pass in your quargs in there,
Okay.
and then we'll do stuff. What we're doing here is we're not putting quargs in the argument of init. But we're saying by doing it in this syntax, it essentially tells Python student info is a dictionary whose keys map to arguments for the init function. So break down student info into its pairs into key value pairs.
Mhm.
And then after it breaks down the key value pairs, then like rearrange the values in the correct order for the init function.
How does it know
That's
it's the correct order?
This is internal Python magic. So
Okay.
it knows like,
No,
but
no
basically it just
magic.
needs to take this and turn it into this order
Oh, I see what. So it already knows to look for init for the correct order.
because it's in student. So because it's looking at student and we're calling student in this way with a
Mhm.
parentheses, it's calling the init function. And then when we're telling it that it is with the two asterisks and a dictionary, that's what tells it, all right, take all this stuff, rearrange it so that it fits into here.
Okay. It's not magic. It's just done for you. It's automated. Okay.
Yes. That's
Gotcha.
again, magic is not real,
That is
so
super duper cool. I like
Oh,
that.
it is.
wait a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah, it is very helpful, especially when doing stuff with dictionaries, which there's a lot of data that comes in dictionary format, but that's an aside.
But then how does it know how to parse the different lines? So like if you're uh like you we already have the CSV files. I mean
Right.
does it automatically know how to parse lines? Does it
No.
need to
So that's the part that we need to work on now.
okay.
So so what we did is we said, assuming we have a dictionary, I can turn a dictionary into a student object. The only
Okay.
problem is we don't have a dictionary. We have
CSV.
a bunch of CSV stuff. So you have to turn this into a dictionary.
Right.
So let's make a new file just for now. Just we'll call this test.py. So now we need to go ahead and try to figure out how to read a CSV file. Um, you can do this in Python using a CSV library. So you just need to say import CSV. As it says here, CSV library lets you read, write, and investigate, an interesting word to use, CSV files. So again, it's just a simple import statement, nothing more. And yes, thank you for putting the reference in Ealing. That's real helpful. So once we have that, the first thing we need to be able to do is, so CSV will you can either read in a file line by line, or you can read in the whole thing at once. So I'll just write this down. Either read in line by line or all at once. For now, let's just read in the whole thing at once. So the way that we do this is first, in order to read a file, first we need to be able to open the file. So first we have to open the file. Once we open the file, we then need to read the file. We'll then need to convert the file into a list of dictionaries. So let's go through each step of this process one by one. In order to open the file, we have to use a little bit of code that I'm going to copy paste, and I'll explain it after. So let's break this down. So the first thing that we're doing here is we're saying, hey, Python, I need you to open the file located here. So as we see, imhest.py is located here. The data folder is what we need to go into, and then students.csv. I'm then going to open it in read mode. So R is read mode. And then the encoding part is just UTF-8 by default. Don't worry about what that means for right now. And you need to specify that we are reading this as file F, which is just a variable. So we don't really have enough time to talk about why the formatting is this way. We can certainly get into that next week, but for now, just accept that this is the format that you need to use to open a CSV file in Python. And again, I'll send all the code after the lecture is complete, so that way you guys can all reference it. The next thing we need to do is we're going to need to read the file. So what we can say is can declare an item called reader. And we can say that this is csv.dictReader, and this should tell you what it does. Maybe it doesn't. Okay. And well, basically what this is doing is this is saying, hey, read the file as a bunch of dictionaries, please. So we're opening the CSV package, we're pulling out this dictReader function, and we're saying, pulling the dictReader function and saying to do that for this file. However, if I just try to print out reader right now just to see what shows up, so let's try that actually and see what happens. Okay, nothing gets printed. That's strange. I wonder why. But also, what on earth is a dictReader? A dictReader is not a list or a dictionary or like a nice type of variable in Python for us to deal with. So we're going to need to convert that into a list. So we'll say is list of students is going to equal list of reader. And let's try to print out the list of students. Hopefully this should save. Try running it again. Oh, here, let me go back out. There we go.
You're running the runner file instead of the test.py.
Oh, that explains a lot, and also why I keep seeing Richmond High show up. Thank you. All right, let's back up a second then. Let's print out reader first, see what shows up. And that gives us a yucky dick reader object, which is what I expected. So thank you, Nicholas, for the correction there. So now instead, if we try to print out that if we convert the dict reader to a list and print out the list of students now, that we have converted okay, let me move this. We've converted the CSV from that Excel sheet format into a list of dictionaries, right? So now we have this dictionary here for Lisa, which if we take a look at that and we go to student, that is in the exact same format as student info. right, for Diana. So we are now successfully able to convert each CSV to a list of dictionaries. So we can convert the CSV to dicts, and we can convert a dictionary into a student. Now we just need to combine both of these into one piece of code, and then our problem is solved. So if we go take a look at the README, it says that we need to write a method called allStudents that returns an array of student objects that represent each row in the student CSV file. So let's write that method in here. So we're going to define all students, and then we're going to do some stuff inside there. All right. So all students is going to be a class method because all students does not depend on if I'm calling it or if Jose is calling it or if Brian's calling it. All students does create a bunch of student instances. So here, let me actually just copy paste what they want us to do. Yeah, so it returns an array of student objects that represent each row. So we need to use all students to create a bunch of students. So let's write out our pseudocode. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is turn the CSV file into dictionaries, or into a list of dictionaries. Turn each dictionary into a student. Return a list of students. So we know how to do each part of this. So turn the CSV file into a list of dictionaries. Well, we just did that in here. So let's copy paste this code. And again, this is our code, and we know what we wrote, so that's okay. We're going to need to import CSV as well. So we'll do that at the top here. All right, so we did the first part. So we're returning. So we now have this list of students, which is good. Now we need to turn each dictionary within list of students into a student. So what might we need to use to do that? Any ideas? So remember, list of student is a list of dictionaries. Well, first, we're probably going to need to create a list of students to add students to. So I'm going to change this from list of students to list of student dictionaries. And then I'm going to create an actual list of students, which is going to be blank. Right, so this is where all the student objects will go. Now I need to go through my dictionary. So we can say for student dict in the list of students dictionary. Convert each student dict into a student object. But hang on, we already know how to do that part because we just did that down here. So let's copy this. Let's change that code a little bit. So I'll change student info to student dict because that's what we're using to iterate through the list, right? And then instead of student, well, this is a class method. Oh, I forgot to put CLS. See, even I forgot that sometimes. So we can replace student with CLS, and then we can just say new student is now the converted student. And then we're going to need to append new student to the list of students. So I'll just say list of students dot append the new student. And then the last thing we need to do is just return the list of students. So again, to summarize, all students is a class method that takes some CSV file, which is this thing, turns the CSV file using file IO into a list of dictionaries where each row of the CSV file is now a dictionary. Then using this code down here, we turn each dictionary, aka each row of the CSV file, into a student object, and we make a list of those objects. And then we're going to return the student objects at the end. Does this make sense? Like at a overall level? And here, I'll copy paste the code into Slack for everyone. Are there any questions at this point in time? Okay,
Is this going to be on the assessment?
yes.
Oh boy.
Hence why we're doing the lecture now. What I will say, though, is this is going to be a fairly minor part of the assessment. So hypothetically speaking, you should be able to take the code that we collectively have all written here and use it in the assessment with very minor adjustments. But again, this is a very minor part of the assessment, and you all will see that when we release it in after this lecture. So again, as it says here, this is just kind of like the last part of things. We can just copy paste this code into the school part of things, and then you're basically done with, oh, well, we're basically done with this. Now, the main reason why I wanted us to, and again, if you go through the README for School Interface 1, which I think I linked in the Zoom chat, it'll give you a little bit more detail, hopefully, as to why and how this works. I just wanted to make sure to introduce all of you guys to it before we start the assessment, so that if you are asked, which you will be, to read through a CSV database, it's not like totally a surprise on what it is and how to do it. It is going to be very unfamiliar, and we don't really have a way to change that right now, but hopefully this makes it slightly less unfamiliar than starting from scratch.